Alright everyone, today we're going to talk everything you need to know about substats in Raid Shadow Legends. Now this can end up getting quite complicated once you get into the mechanics of how gear actually works and how you can use higher rarity gear to significantly improve the amount of substats that you want for your champions. This gets very complex when you get into the difference between white gear, green gear, blue gear, purple gear, and of course orange or legendary gear, and what the differences are between those gear types and how those higher gear types are going to allow you to get more of the substats that you are looking for. But before we get into anything too complex, let's just go over some of the basics of substats. So let's spend a lot of time today in the actual gear menu, and I'm just going to use whatever gear I can as an example here. Let's go over the differences between what main stats are really quickly and what substats. Very simply, substats are going to be the stats that you see below this part of your screen right here when it comes to gear. Any of the stats that you see below this line right here, those are going to be your substats. And of course, this right here, for the gloves as an example, the attack 26%, that's going to be the main stat. And that is going to scale as you actually level up your gloves. So if I were to take my gloves to plus 13, plus 14, plus 15, or plus 16, the main stats would go up as I increase the levels. The substats underneath it, those are not going to increase each level. There are going to be certain things that do happen to the substats, but they aren't going to happen every single level. They are going to happen every 4 levels. Now, that's going to depend on the actual rarity of the piece of gear that you have. Something different is going to happen if you are leveling up a white piece of gear versus if you are leveling up a green piece of gear or a blue piece of gear or a purple or an orange piece of gear. You notice probably when you see a higher rarity piece of gear, it's going to already have more substats unlocked before you actually level it up. Whereas if you have a lower rarity piece of gear, like white boots, for example, if you level those up, then you will slowly start unlocking substats. But if you don't have white boots leveled up at all, then you'll notice that they don't actually have any substats on them to begin with. Now that's really important, and there's a lot of people, especially people who are newer to the game, that don't really fully understand exactly how that works and what happens as you level up gear, and I'll talk about that. Also, very important to note, very basic, is you cannot have a substat on a piece of gear that is sharing the main stat. So these boots, for example, these are HP percentage boots. So because that is the main stat, I cannot also end up getting HP percentage as a substat. I can end up getting flat HP still, but the exact same main stat cannot be shared with the exact same substat. Also, very importantly, each piece of gear, there are slight differences between what substats and what main stats you can have. Very common example, I've talked about this in plenty of my other gearing videos, is the gear square. We've got our top 3, we've got our middle 3, and we've got the bottom 3, which are going to be the accessories. And as you probably know by now, if you've watched some of the other gearing videos, is the top 3, they're always going to have the same main stats. Weapons will have attack, helmets will have flat HP, and shields will have flat defense. And of course, things get a little bit more complicated when you get into the middle 3 pieces of gear, the gloves, chest, and the boots. These can have a whole bunch of different main stats. And just as a general note, because there's so many different main stats that you can end up getting on gloves, chests, and boots, you're going to spend a lot more of your efforts trying to find those pieces of gear, because again, if you end up getting a piece of gloves that don't have a good main stat, then it doesn't really matter what the substats are, because it has a not so great main stat. You're probably not going to use it anyway, because if it has a bad main stat like flat HP or just something like flat attack that you don't need for a defense character, something along those lines, you just lose way too many stat points for you to sacrifice your main stat over substats. So as a general priority, you want to focus first on the main stat and make sure that it is good before you actually get into looking at the substats. Substats are going to be like the second step, and especially if you're a newer player, you definitely want to focus on the main stat before you get into too many of the details of the actual substats. Now, substats, just like main stats, there are going to be good ones, there are going to be bad ones, and there are going to kind of be neutral ones. And very similar to main stats, the percentage-based substats, generally speaking, those are going to be the better ones. So you have your attack, you have your defense, and you have your HP. And for each of these three, you can end up getting flat HP, percentage HP, flat attack, percentage attack, and flat defense or percentage defense. And if you have the choice between the flat version or the percentage version is generally speaking going to be the better one, just because it scales so much better with all the champions once you level them up. Higher rarity champions. Flat stats, some people say they're okay in certain situations, but they're really not once you end up leveling champions and once you get them to level 60 and whatnot. You can't even compare. Percentage-based stats are going to scale much better, and you are always going to want that on your gear over the flat version. So for these boots, as an example, I would want percentage defense much more than flat defense. That's going to be what you want to get. And then these boots right here, they have flat HP. We wouldn't want that in comparison to, say, percentage HP. So that's something you can generally look at when it comes to substats, is you want that percentage much more than you want the flat version. Now, the king of all substats, and I would honestly say the king of all stats in general in Raid Shadow Legends, is going to be speed. And speed doesn't have a flat or percentage, it's just going to be a base value. You are going to want to try to get speed as a substat on as many pieces of gear for your champions as you can, especially if that champion has skills that are specific that are going to give you massive advantages. Like Seeker is an example, has a very useful skill, Tailwind, which is going to fill the turn meter of all allies and give an increased attack buff. Also grants an extra turn with a short cooldown. This is a really awesome skill, and the way that Seeker works, you want to try to get as much speed on him as you possibly can, especially for things like the arena. But it's not just for specific champions, just generally speaking, when it comes to pretty much every champion, you always want to try to get as much speed as you can, because speed is going to mean that you're going to take more turns in comparison to your enemy. More turns means just more damage and more everything. So it really is, at this point in Raid Shadow Legends, and who knows for the foreseeable future, it really just kind of is the king of all stats. Then you want to take a look. Another, I would say, going down the priority list, we've got the speed. Then I would say crit rate is another really good substat. This is something that I would say as you get into the later stages of mid-game to late game, you're going to want to try to get as much crit rate on a whole bunch of champions. Not every champion is going to benefit from crit rate. This is going to depend a little bit on the champions that you're using, but I would say most champions are going to benefit significantly by having a high crit rate. It's going to make them do a whole lot of extra damage. Some of their abilities are going to scale specifically off of having critical rates proc. So some champions, this is absolutely necessary, like Cold Heart, for example. You're going to want at least 70% crit rate for, I believe it is the Heart Seeker skill right here. Attacks one enemy, fully depletes the turn meter, has an extra 30% chance of inflicting a critical hit. Damage increases according to enemy max HP. You might have seen there are some videos and there are some people who can actually build their Cold Heart in a way with certain buffs and debuffs to actually do over 1 million damage with the skill. So very powerful, especially if you have your Cold Heart built to 70% crit, because you're getting an extra 30% crit from that specific skill. So critical rate and critical damage as well are also going to be very strong skills. Now you kind of have to balance those together, and this is getting to be into a little bit more, I guess you could say, like mid-game, late-game strategies, is just kind of finding the right combination of stats and the right balancing. Because of course, the more crit rate you have for a champion, the better crit damage is going to be, because you're actually going to be hitting more critical hits. If you have less chance to critical, then critical damage is not going to be as good because you're not benefiting from it as much. But also very good stats, and I would say generally speaking for most champions, you're going to want crit rate and crit damage. You want to look for those more before you look for things like attack, defense, or HP. But now we're moving into those, because those are also very important. Now everything I've talked about so far, there's no bad version of it. So speed, there's only one speed, there's no percentage, there's no flat, there's only just speed. Same for critical rate and same for critical damage. There's only crit rate percentage and crit damage percentage. Now we move into HP, attack, and defense, and for these three, you want to try to look for the better version of it. So for HP, there's flat HP, there's percentage HP. you're going to want to look for percentage HP. Same for attack. Flat attack, percentage attack, you want to try to get the percentage attack, and for defense as well. Flat defense, percentage defense, you want to try to get the percentage one. So these ones you actually have to worry about a possible bad version. And now we are moving into the last two. We've got accuracy and we've got resist. Now accuracy, I think some people might have slightly different opinions about accuracy. To me, accuracy is good, but generally speaking, the way that I see accuracy as substats when it comes to gear is you want to try to eventually end up getting an accuracy banner for a lot of champions that have skills that are going to depend on accuracy. You're also going to get a decent amount of accuracy from the Great Hall, especially as you start getting these accuracies leveled up. That's still not going to be enough, though. You're still going to need some more. But generally speaking, you don't need to focus on getting tons and tons of accuracy on your other gear. You'll kind of just see it because as you get to the later stages of the game, you end up getting so many stats on gear, you'll probably end up finding it on at least a few pieces of gear here and there. You don't necessarily need to try to get it as much as you do the other stats, because hopefully when you do have an accuracy banner, you do have your Great Hall built up a bit. Then maybe also some masteries as well. If you can get some masteries, that will help you out with accuracy for certain skills. Hopefully the little bit of extra accuracy that you have just by having extra stats on your gear will be enough to put you over the edge. If not, then you might need to focus on it a little bit more, but generally speaking, as you get to the late game, you should find yourself with enough accuracy to where you don't need to focus on it as much as some of the other stats. Resist, generally speaking, is not going to be one of the more desired substats. I would say this is probably closer to the bottom of the list alongside things like flat HP, flat attack, and flat defense. There might be some certain situations where it might be better than others for certain champions or maybe certain dungeons, but generally speaking, resist is not going to be a very highly desired substat. So now that we've gone over what all the different substats are, what they are going to do, and which ones you want to try to look for, let's talk about the difference between the gear rarities, because that is what is going to determine how many substats that you can actually have. So the quality of gear, white common gear versus green uncommon gear versus blue rare gear, purple epic gear, and orange legendary gear, all these things, they do not have any impact on the main stats of gear. It doesn't matter whether you have a 4-star common helmet or a 4-star legendary helmet. All 4-star helmets that are the same level are going to have the same HP. As you can see, this +8 4-star epic helmet, 1286, 4-star +8 legendary helmet, 1286, rare, same thing, 1286. So they are all going to have the same stats regardless of rarity for the main stat if they are at the same star level. The rarity is really going to determine the substats. So what happens is substats are going to get boosted every 4 levels. So at +4, +8, +12, and +16. Now, if you have a common piece of gear, they are going to come with no substats unlocked. So when you have a common piece of gear, you are relying purely on RNG. Every 4 levels, you are going to have a substat randomly unlocked. Now, very importantly is because you do not have any substats already unlocked, you cannot get any bonuses to the substats that you already have unlocked on that piece of gear because, again, white gear will not have any substats unlocked. It's not until you get to green gear where green gear is going to already come with 1 substat unlocked. So when you get a piece of green gear, even if it is not leveled up at +0, it is going to have a substat on it already unlocked. Now, what that is going to mean is that when you do get that piece of gear to +4, you're still going to get a substat, but it's going to boost a substat that you already have unlocked. So these boots, when I got these 5-star boots at +0, they did not have HP, but they did have accuracy. Now, because they only come with 1 substat already unlocked, when you level up a green piece of gear to +4, it is going to give you a boost to whatever substat that you had unlocked. So because these green boots did come with accuracy, when I level them up to +4, they are going to get a boost to the accuracy. Now, at that point forward, they're going to function just like a white item. Because they only came with 1 item or 1 substat already unlocked, now there's still 3 more slots that you can have. You can have 4 substats on a piece of gear in total, 4 different substats. Now every +4 levels after that, you're going to get another substat at random, but you can no longer get any more boosts to substats after you have already gotten the boost that you can. So green gear can only end up getting 1 boost. Now we move on to blue gear, and blue gear is going to be similar to green gear, except now you have 2 substats that are already unlocked before you even start leveling up a piece of gear. Like, let's look at this helmet, for example, right here. So as you can see, it is not leveled up. It is +0, but there's already 2 substats on it. Green gear would be exactly the same as this, except there would be 1 substat. Now, if I level up a piece of blue gear to +4, what's going to happen is it's going to give me a boost to one of these 2 substats at random. Then when I level it up to +8, it's going to give me another boost to one of these 2 substats at random. So what that means, the trade-off is there are 2 stats that are already unlocked, but I can get a possibility of 2 boosts. So if I get really lucky and I have a really good substat, let's just say I wanted this defense to get a boost. When I level it up to +4, there's a 50-50 chance that that defense is going to get a boost. Then when I level it up to +8, there's another 50-50 chance that this defense is going to get a boost. So as you go up in rarity for gear, it's going to be more rare for you to be able to get more boosts on a specific substat, but you're also going to have the possibility of getting more boosts to that substat. So you can see how this really is kind of like an end game, late game progression system. Is higher rarity gear does have the possibility of being really, really good if you get certain boosts on the substats that you're really looking for, but because you also have more stats unlocked, the chance of you getting those boosts is going to be a lot lower. Then again, just like green gear, after +8, everything after that, the +12 and +16 substats, because we don't have them unlocked, there's still 2 slots left on this rare piece of gear. Those ones are going to be at random, and those substats do not have the possibility of being boosted. You can only boost substats on green, blue, purple, and orange gear that are already unlocked before you start leveling it up. So if I end up getting crit damage or crit chance or speed at +12, I can't get a boost to that anymore because it's not one of these 2 substats that came with the item before I started to level it up. So that's also very important to note. Epic gear, exactly the same as blue gear, except now we've bumped it up from 2 unlocked stats to 3 of them. But just like with blue gear, because we have 3 stats that are unlocked now, the chance of us getting boosts on the stat that we are looking for is no longer 50-50. It's now 1 in 3. Like if I wanted to get a boost to the speed, it's now a 1 in 3 chance, but I can also get 3 boosts as well. So I could get really lucky and at +4 get a boost to the speed, +8 get a boost to the speed, and then at +12 get another boost to the speed. But the chance of that happening, if you do the math, is 1 in 3 times 1 in 3 times 1 in 3, which is 1 in 27. Whereas for blue gear, if I wanted to get this defense boosted twice, it's just 1 in 2 times 1 in 2, which is 1 in 4. So much, much lower chance to get 3 boosts on a single substat that you're looking for epic gear. Exactly the same. +4, +8, +12 will give us a boost to the already unlocked substats, and then +16 will unlock the final substat, which you can no longer end up getting boosted. And of course, that only leaves legendaries left, which are going to function exactly the same, except legendaries have all 4 of the substats unlocked. So when you are looking at a piece of legendary gear, that is it when it comes to the substats. You are no longer going to get any more random substats. It already has all the substats unlocked on it. It's just that every +4 levels is going to end up giving a random boost to one of the 4 substats that you have. And if you get really, really lucky, you could end up getting 4 boosts to a single substat. So if you had speed, you could get very lucky, 1 in 4 chance happening 4 times. I don't even know what the odds are off the top of my head. What is that? 1 in 4 times 1 in 4, which is 1 in 16, times another 1 in 4, which is 1 in 64, times another 1 in 4, which is 1 in 256, I think. So an extremely, extremely low chance. But as you can see, the higher rarity gear, when it comes to substats, is going to open up the potential for getting that god tier piece of gear if you get really, really lucky. So that is going to be the difference between common gear to green gear to blue gear, purple gear to legendary gear. It has no impact on the main stat. It really is just going to be for substat optimization. So I have thrown an insane amount of info at you guys in this video. This has been one of my longer videos, and oh my goodness, if you're a newer player, you're probably pretty overwhelmed right now. So I'm going to leave it here, and if there's more stuff to talk about when it comes to substats, or if you guys have any questions or anything like that, please feel free to let me know in the comments section. I will do my best to answer any questions that you guys have. And of course, if you guys did like this video and it did help out and you did learn, consider subscribing to the channel for more videos like this in the future. And of course, if you have a quick second to drop a like, that would help out quite a bit as well. Thank you guys, everyone, for watching all the videos. Really appreciate all the support, all the new subscribers lately. And until next time, everybody, this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.